there, how's it going? Welcome to the channel. I would like to have a little chat with y'all about Hazbin Hotel. Now, since I could sit here all day and talk about the hell of a world and its characters and dig into the good and bad of the Hazbin story, there are a million other channels already covering that, which, trust me, I have seen. But today I want to share a little theory of mine. This is kind of a theory that sneaks up on you in the shower or at 3 a.m. However, on top of that, I also saw something strangely coincidental in the show, and it sparked this entire idea. And that is that there are 7 archangels in the hell of a universe, and we have already met 5 of them in season 1. But before we get into it, I'm Umi Lee, and in the background I have a little bit of Lucifer fan art rolling for you guys. I would have the speed paint of the Charlie that I put in the thumbnail rolling, but yeah, I'll flash both final pieces at the end regardless. I would like to disclaim real quick that I am not religious, nor was I raised that way. Specifically, I have never read a single religious text in my life of any kind, so any research I did for this video is from a point of view of someone that's a complete outsider. Ultimately, this video is just for fun, so get a cup of coffee or a snack and let me take you on a little journey. Also, I know that a lot of people like to watch this kind of content in the background, so I'll play this sound when I put something relevant on the screen. So, 7 archangels. You might be wondering how I came to that conclusion when no such thing has been mentioned by name in the show at all, outside of Charlie's cryptic allusion to the Elders of Heaven in the prologue of episode 1. Well, the beginning of my theory surrounds the event of me watching Hazbin Hotel for the second time round and reaching episode 6, within which there was some imagery that had me pausing the court scene and having a little bit of an epiphany. But we'll get to that in just a second. First, I must explain a little bit of my theory origin story. So I have seen my fair share of theory, lore, and world breakdown videos, however, almost no one comes close to mentioning archangels. This always baffled me because even though Sarah is the highest authority in heaven that we've been introduced to, we know that she is not the highest power that there is. She presents herself as extremely influential, but I don't think that she even has enough power to enact something like, oh, I don't know, divine punishment on another angel, such as what happened to Lucifer, but I'll come back to that in a bit. For now, to get this ball rolling, in episode 5 we see traits of the Elders of Heaven from Lucifer's point of view. At first glance, there's nothing remarkable about them and they remain as a placeholder design until you notice that there are only 6. 6 is an odd number for archangels no matter how you slice it. 4 or 2 is common in Christianity and there are 7 in the Book of Enoch within Judaism, not 6. But then I realized that Lucifer was in the middle of the shot and it all clicked. Lucifer being in this shot wouldn't be that big of a deal on its own, but there are a few context clues that hint otherwise. You see, this isn't the first instance that we have seen these exact silhouettes before. In the prologue of episode 1, these figures are shown when Charlie references the Elders of Heaven from her storybook, and notice Lucifer is also in the center of this shot, perhaps even playing the role as their 7th member. Every time all 6 of these angels are on screen, Lucifer is the only other one depicted with them. Personally, I also think that 7 archangels would be fitting since Vivzipop chose to use the Judaic storytelling of Eden, which featured Lilith and her eventual unity with Lucifer. Within Judaism and the Book of Enoch, there are 7 archangels to speak of, and I will get to the distinct lack of Lucifer in those 7 names here in a bit. It could also be argued that Sarah is one of these elders and that the silhouettes shouldn't be taken at face value, but when I checked Sarah and Emily's halos in both their casual and biblical forms, they don't match any of the halos in the elder figures. So whoever they are separate entities from the Seraph class or from Sarah and Emily's seat of power. At this point, I think I've caught us up to what is common knowledge to a lot of fans out there. I've seen these elder characters depicted in comics and fan art as well as a few animatics, but where my theory stems from is its connection to episode 6, Welcome to Heaven. Imagine my surprise after noticing that there are only 6 angels in Lucifer's flashback, that Welcome to Heaven promptly reintroduces us to these elusive characters. What I'm talking about is the inciting observation that gave this theory its substance in my mind. Characters that look like throwaway background figures at first glance with no particular significance. That's right, I'm talking about these 4 lovely angels and their unique gray skin and golden wings at the very bottom of the totem pole during Charlie's confrontation with Sarah. I believe that these 4 angels are not simply just throwaway designs to fill out the stands, but 4 of the archangels themselves. And before you ask why I thought this, considering their clear gutter status on the totem pole, I don't think that these are the actual archangels so much as they are clones or shadows of the archangels archangels sent to keep a discreet eye on things that don't require their direct interference. We already know that Lucifer can make clones of himself and massively alter reality, so why wouldn't the most powerful beings in heaven also possess this ability? Also, cool side note, in the Book of Enoch, the 7 archangels are given the title, the 7 holy angels who watch, which I think fits with the possibility that they each have their own methods of keeping up to date with the state of heaven from afar. What initially caught my eye was the halo of this angel in particular. Their halo's design is pretty distinct and stands out amongst every other angel under Sarah and Emily in its complexity. I also recognize this design as the one from this particular silhouetted elder in Lucifer's flashback in more than anything. Upon looking closer, I realized that there are not only 3 angels in that row that had similar gray skin theming, putting them all in the same classification of angel, but their halos also had twins in Lucifer's flashback and prologue. I'll go ahead and put them all side by side here for you to see. As you may have already noticed, there are way too many similarities between them to be a coincidence. Additionally, this one in their head shape is referred to more than once outside of this scene. We see them again just after the shot with the 6 elders in the prologue helping Sarah and the 2 Orphanim create humanity on Earth. They are also seen before the shot with the 6, with the same 2 Orphanim and the elder with the diamond halo. All this leads me to the conclusion that the designs of these angels are anything but unintentional, and we will be seeing them again down the line. But before I dig deeper, I'd like to acknowledge the counter-arguments to all of this and do a little bit of debunking. For those who are longtime fans of Vivziepop and her work will probably already be aware of what I'm about to address, but as someone that only joined the fandom a few months ago, this came as a big surprise to me. Long before the pilot aired, Viv posted a design of the Archangel Gabriel to her community. Apparently, the caption had described him as one of the only 3 archangels in Zoofobia, her old comic. I won't consider that too hard as I can't find the original post and I'm unsure of how accurate that is, but if it's true, I do think that it's severely outdated. At this point, Zoofobia is extremely different from the plot of Hazbin, and the characters carried over to Hazbin have gone through a cacophony of changes since their initial conception. Also, after looking at Gabriel's design, it seems like his old concept was turned into what Loot eventually became, and his motifs turned into the theme for The Exorcist as a whole, which is pretty neat. Another killer to my theory is the absence of Lucifer in the lineup of archangels in Judaism. The official lineup in the Book of Enoch was Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, Raphael, Sariel, Raguel, and Remiel. Now, some of these names are less popular in pop culture. I would say that Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael are fairly common since they also carry over to Christianity, but the other 3 tend to be interchangeable depending on the creative goal of the author. Lucifer, obviously, is a vastly popular figure. Whether he's officially a fallen angel or not, in most stories, he's always depicted with obscene amounts of influence and power. Aside from him, I've definitely heard the names Azrael and Jovial a lot more than Remiel and Raguel, who share similar roles and or motifs with the aforementioned 2, which leaves Sariel. There isn't a lot out there about this archangel other than that they're loosely connected with protective magic from what I could find. They apparently taught humanity the course of the moon and once played a larger role with the big 4, Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael. What stood out to me though was that through his actions of teaching humanity the course of the moon and, quote, lusting after the daughters of man while he was at it, landed him the status of fallen. Among the other 7 mentioned in the Book of Enoch, they're the only one that has a fallen status. This becomes even more suspicious when you consider that another of his purposes was to watch over those that sinned, which, yeah, I mean, look at what Lucifer is doing. Alright, so even if that was a bit of a jump, I do think that it's worth thinking about. The archangels in media have been largely up to interpretation, so honestly, Lucifer not being in the lineup didn't deter me too much since the lineup changes depending on who you ask, which religion you're referring to, or even which time period a religious text was written. Now, Lucifer's name in Judaism is Samael, or Samael, which is an angel that follows our Lucifer's history to a T, from his unification with Lilith, the tempting of Eve with the apple, and falling into hell and becoming the leader of the devils. And for some reason, they specifically call it Asmodeus as being subservient to him. I don't know why they had to do our Ozzy like that, but I thought it was relevant considering what Ozzy is like in the Helliverse. Last but not least, I see a lot of people in the community assuming Lucifer was a seraph based on his wings. Historically, that classification would be accurate, and for a while that bothered me as well until I remembered that every silhouetted figure that I'm referring to each has 6 wings of their own. Considering how important they seem to be with the current title of Elders paired with their lack of appearance in Season 1 during Charlie's audience, I think that we need to look at this another way. Sarah holds the title of High Seraphim of Heaven, but these other 6 angels never appeared, despite them having traditionally seraph traits. I would like to make the claim that perhaps all archangels are seraphim, but not all Seraphim are angels. We don't have a definitive guide to how class or rank works in heaven within the Helliverse yet, so there's still a lot of room for interpretation. We don't know if the angels can rise in the ranks and take on a new classification of angel, or if it's a permanent class they are given at birth. Emily herself raises a lot of questions as well. Was she created as a seraph specifically? By who? Or is she Sarah's daughter somehow? How about Adam? How did he manage to get to such a high rank as a mortal soul? Except no, because he said that his soul was immortal during his fight with Alistair, so what does that imply? Anyway, these are some topics for another day, but I just wanted to throw them out there. Also, more food for thought, the only other angels that we have seen with golden wings other than Adam are the figures that we are talking about in this video, and I think that might not be an accident. Let's get into which angels we might be dealing with here. I'm going to connect all 6 names based on the limited visual motifs we have for each, so I won't try to pretend that this is concrete in any way, but I think that it might be pretty close. I've already ruled out Michael and Gabriel since those two are traditionally the oldest and the right and left hands of God, and coincidentally, those 2 silhouettes in both showcases are at the top or forefront of the lineup and also absent from the court. I do think that the angel with the most halo rings is Michael as the oldest and the sword of God. It's hard not to look at that halo compared to all the others and assume he's not pretty important. I'm assigning the name of Gabriel to this one due to process of elimination, but there are a couple of things in his design that might help support this. One is that this detail over his shoulders matches the cut of the cloth in his old design, as well as the one from the Exorcist uniform. There are also these 2 details over his eyes that are connected to the Exorcist as well. I tried to connect Gabriel to the Exorcist army based on historical interpretations, but mentions of him being violent are a bit scarce. For the other 4, I think that the one with the high collar is Rigel or Jovial. He's the only one with his wings retracted of the 4 we meet here, and he looks to be the most battle ready. His role traditionally is the Archangel of Justice, Fairness, and Vengeance, and his job is to keep the fallen angels and demons in check. I don't have any solid evidence that this is him, but I have to say that he gives off the air of someone who means business. He even has the Sasuke collar, so... I think that the one with the eyes on the shoulder is Uriel. Uriel is said to be the sharpest sighted in heaven and is the Archangel of Wisdom. They are also said to wield the fiery sword and stand guard in Eden in days past. Less commonly, Uriel is connected to being the Angel of Terror, Prophecy, or Mystery. This one is easier to place for me just because the plethora of eyes embodied all of Uriel's motifs at the same time. Imagine an Archangel that can see all and protect you from harm unless they see something you did that they didn't like. It's the epitome of trading freedom for safety, which honestly really fits how heaven is depicted in Hazbin Hotel. I'm going to give the name Raphael to the angel with the V halo. There isn't a lot connecting to the 2 since the angel has the least to go off in terms of unique design. I would like to point out though that this angel, along with who I named Uriel, is near the forefront of the lineup depiction with Michael and Gabriel, following the common trend that these 4 are the oldest and most prominent in many faiths. Unfortunately, that's not the case in the prologue, but I still believe it's worth noting. We also see them in this shot in Charlie's story alongside our next angel, as well as after Charlie mentions how heaven is ruled by beings of pure light. This implies to me that these 2, as well as those they are depicted besides, are indeed pretty exalted. Last but not least, I would like to name this particular angel Remiel or Azrael. When reading about Remiel, who has less lore attached to him, it did mention that he received the title of God Has Thundered or Thunder of God, which doesn't connect to his purpose at all, but I do think it's funny that it matches his lightning bolt robe pretty well. He is also the Archangel of Hope or Death if they're Azrael, and both names represent the one that ferries souls of the faithful to heaven. Remiel is also the master of true vision, so essentially he has a mystic eye and is tasked with reaping souls. Compared to the other 3 here, I do think that this description matches him pretty well. We also see him depicted with Sarah when Charlie talks about angels expanding the universe in their ways and creating man. I think that this is interesting because in Islamic traditions, Azrael, who is Remiel in this case, was said to have collected the necessary materials needed to make Adam and Eve, which makes putting him here with the creators of humanity pretty fitting. These are the names I'm connecting with the 6 mystery angels, but let me know what you think. I'm legitimately curious to see what other people make of their imagery compared to biblical lore. Alright, let's talk about Sarah. Yeah, remember when I said that despite her title, she really doesn't give off the impression of a powerful being? Well, unfortunately for her, I would not only like to talk about this, but also use it as evidence as to why the other 6 elders in question are important to this story. We'll begin with the elephant in the room, and that is her talk with Emily about Lucifer's fall. Now, it's assumed that Sarah was the one in charge of Lucifer's trial that he supposedly had and was one of the causes of his damnation. However, I can't bring myself to agree with this, I mean, while it's really neat and the idea has led to some fantastic fan creations, to me, Sarah is kind of a tool for higher powers. When she uses Lucifer as an example to warn Emily against her train of thought, it appears genuine. Why would Sarah say this if she herself was the deciding factor on Emily's fall? That would be like your evil stepmother telling you what happened to the last child that crossed her so that you would start behaving. I don't know about you, but no matter how paranoid and rigid Sarah is, I don't believe that she's a tyrant. Her fear of Emily's downfall is strong, and I think it's because judgment is passed by a higher authority and Sarah has no pull against that whatsoever. She watches Charlie during the audience with legitimate sorrow as the princess explains her idealistic dream of redeeming sinners through a process that makes so much sense to anyone with empathy. Every time I watch this scene, I always get the sense that Sarah is seeing Lucifer and Charlie and Emily during the entire meeting. However mournful she appears, despite not being able to give either of them a decent reason for denying Charlie's theory or a justification for Heaven's actions, she stands fast to her decisions. It's almost as if she believes she's protecting them in doing so. Speaking of the hearing, Sarah never exhibits any shows of power. She is unnerved, unsure, and vulnerable in the face of the audience. She loses her authority over Charlie almost immediately and does nothing to stop the entire situation from spiraling out of control. Instead of acknowledging what Charlie and Emily pointed out and you didn't know, she brushes it off and ends the hearing. Also, I think that it would be interesting if Sarah was actually looking at the 4 archangel clones in this shot. She looked pretty frightened to me, which makes no sense if these angels are all below her in rank. None of them said anything when the exterminations were revealed, and until Charlie actually pointed out that the angels were fighting, none of them so much as rose a brow. So who is she afraid of? Is she afraid because she and Adam lied to Heaven, or is she afraid because she's being witnessed losing control over her people? Or both? I'll let that sink in for a minute while we shift gears over to Lucifer and Lilith. Lucifer hasn't given us much on Heaven in terms of his relationship with anyone up there. All we know is that he is capable of arranging meetings through someone. We are left to assume that it's Sarah, but neither one of them seem particularly delighted about that. What he has given us, however, is his phrasing to Charlie in episode 6 of Dad Beat Dad when his facade finally breaks. He said that Heaven never listens and that they didn't listen to him. A few minutes earlier, he uses the same phrasing to say that they have rules, lots of rules, and they may not be so open-minded as you'd hope. While using they to refer to Heaven isn't that remarkable on its own, Lucifer definitely has certain figures in mind when saying all of this because his flashback and more than anything has some pretty damning evidence. I'm gonna make a little bit of a leap here and assume that Sarah was actually really far from his mind whenever he was warning Charlie, even if she was the one he would be setting up the meeting through. Sarah is not in charge. As for Lilith, oh boy. Lute says that Lilith made a deal with Adam, and that upon his death, their deal is done. Lute clearly presumes that based on her phrasing, whatever terms Lilith and Adam had are now directly passed to her. But that deal is a topic for another day. Call me crazy, but there shouldn't be a reason why Lilith should be allowed in Heaven under any circumstances, just as Lucifer isn't. I mean, Lucifer specifically told Charlie that he wouldn't be able to go with her to Heaven, even though he knew he wanted to protect her. So why does the deal with Adam give her immunity? Sarah is way too paranoid to let that happen, considering how Lilith's music led directly to the unity that made Sarah afraid of an uprising to begin with. The fact that Sarah doesn't know Lilith is in Heaven also hints that not everyone can actually conjure the all-seeing eye. Adam is the only one we've seen conjure the orb that can see events past and present both in Heaven and Hell. But remember how I said that Uriel could see all? So this deal between Adam and Lilith could imply a few things. One, that Adam has some kind of pull with the Archangels, or at least one of them. This would allow him to do as he pleases, like he already does, and even allow Lilith, the first sinning woman, back into Heaven for selfish reasons. This would explain why angels who can see all, like Uriel, wouldn't stop him. Or that the Archangels and Sarah don't have oversight over Adam within Heaven. We know that he's no longer considered a mortal soul, but an immortal like any other being of light, which is interesting. I also mentioned that his wings are golden, like the 4 supposed Archangel figures in this theory, except for the one hiding their wings. This goes along with the age-old lore that Adam and Eve were created in God's likeness, and it can't be that much of a stretch to say that his angelic form wouldn't be too far off from the archangels who God also had a hand in crafting. Does this give him the same pull as archangels in terms of rank? We know it doesn't give him the same power since he was careful around Sarah and definitely outmatched by Lucifer, but we're getting distracted. All of this brings me to the conclusion that Sarah is the highest power we have been introduced to, but she answers to the elders. And these elders are the archangels who have been subtly keeping tabs on the goings-on in Heaven right below our noses. Thank you to those who made it this far. Just for you guys, I have a little crack theory to give you about Michael, namely how we met him a long time ago. I think Michael is heaven. Okay, well, I think he embodies the protections around heaven. That would make the 5 rings around heaven his halo rings, heaven itself his all-seeing eye on his chest, and the suspiciously wing-like clouds around the entire planet being his seraph wings. Let that sink in. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. This is my first ever video on this channel and definitely my first ever long form video on YouTube. I have a dead AMV channel that I haven't posted on in 3 years. God, why am I so bad at interpreting time? Anyway, I've been here before, but my goals have changed. Let me know what you think about this video and share your theories below. I want to make more art and storytime chat videos in the future, so if you enjoyed your time here, please consider subscribing and letting me know in the comments. It was nice chatting with you guys, and I'll see you on the flip side. Ciao!